Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Andrea LeDew. She's an author. She's author of Polemics, Political Poems, and Prose, a new collection for those with. She says about flagging patriotism, and we'll talk about her book, and we'll talk about how why she chose traditional rhyme, about creative writing, and how art helps us understand things in confusing times. Welcome to the show, Andrea.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your having me here.
Welcome, welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Andrea. And I'm sure not
Mhm.
just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about how one can make sense of political chaos through poetry. So we'll talk about all this. But before that, let's learn a bit about your journey, your background, your story, so that people know who they are listening to.
All right. Um, I'm from the United States, obviously. I live in Florida right now, in Jacksonville. However, I didn't always live in Florida. I was born in the northern states, and I spent quite a bit of time in Minneapolis, Minnesota when I was younger. I moved here when I was about 15 and went to college at the University of Florida. I had an English degree, and then I applied to law school, and I was accepted into law school. And then in the middle of that summer, I found out that I had received a scholarship to go to Germany. I had been tutoring as a German tutor at the university, not being a German major, but it was just an enjoyable group to be around. So I had done that about 10 hours a week while I was in college, and I managed to get this wonderful scholarship, and I stayed 10 months in Würzburg, West Germany at the time, before the wall fell, and I got to travel all around. They had all sorts of programs for foreigners. They actually had a special bureau to welcome foreign students, which is different than the way we treat our foreigners today in the United States. Um, but I continued to stay there for the 10 months and went to school and got to learn a little bit about the way other people around the world think of the United States, which is not a point of view that you often encounter when you are, an American citizen living only in the United States, never traveling. So as a part of this Foreigners Bureau exchange and the speech program and things like that, I met people from all around the world, Brazil, Egypt, um, all over Europe, lots of Eastern Europeaners when, the wall was still up. So it was an interesting journey that some of them had taken to get over to Germany to study. So after I came back from my German tour, I went to the University of Florida Law School. I managed to defer my enrollment, stayed there for 3 years, and I was very interested in international law. That was one of the things I was especially excited about. But unfortunately, I graduated into a recession. And so there were not a whole lot of jobs out there for international lawyers, nor were my grades really sufficient to make me at the top of the heap for that pile. So, so I ended up going down to South Florida to join my husband, who I had met, 7 years earlier, and we were planning to get married. And and I looked for a job there. So I worked in a collections law firm for a short time, maybe 9 months, and then I worked for a child support enforcement law firm. So they had the contract to follow up on anybody who doesn't pay their child support. And so I got to be inside a courtroom quite a bit, although in very small hearings and no jury or anything like that. So I did that for about 3 years, and then my husband and I decided to start having children. So I was going to court, getting larger and larger and larger every month, walking with my files behind my back. And and eventually I took maternity leave. They were, gracious enough in those days, in the early 90s to grant me maternity leave. And in the middle of my maternity leave, the firm decided to close down. So I was out of a job and I had a newborn baby and I had to make a choice. And so I did. And it was a very easy choice. And I chose to stay home with my kids. And bizarrely, I have never gone back. So my husband always says that he has successfully kept a lawyer off the streets, and that is his pride. And but I have always kept up my license. I have always, paid attention to legal news, and it's been very helpful to inform, the positions that I take in my book, polemics, political poems, and prose. And I can show a copy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Andrea, what led to this book? Means any particular event or events that made you go and write this particular book?
Well, I've been writing for some time the contents of the book. So I would say that since 2015, I've had a blog. I've put up a lot of creative writing on that blog. And every time something in politics struck me as being a little odd or against my legal training, I would write a poem about it or write a short essay. Um, and over the years, these collected. And of course, I was writing on other topics as well. But when the beginning of this year hit, even from the moment of the election, everyone knew, okay, Trump is coming back into power. I thought that this was a good time to bring out kind of a synopsis of what has happened over the last 10 years in the United States in terms of political events that have affected uh, the way our country is perceived by others, the way that we walk around in our country, the way obviously immigrants are treated, things like that. So I collected up all my poems, I put them together, and I self-published on the 1st of June, and now it's out there in the world.
Absolutely. So, Andrea, what is it that you want to tell the world through your through, and why did you choose poetry to show this, and also to understand the political landscape? If you take 10 years, then 2016, then Trump, uh, you know, uh, Trump won, and then there was the Joe Biden administration, and then again
Hmm.
the Trump administration. So it means it looks like that you want to take an overall view of politics within the 10 years. Help us understand what I just asked in that backdrop.
Yes, well, I found that Trump years are very inspiring because there's just a lot going on, and there's a lot you don't expect. Um, in the Biden years, I found it very a little duller, actually. It's like it seemed more back to normal. But now we're back in the the blender again. And so there's constantly something that will inspire you. Now, as for poetry, and particular, of course, I do a lot of rhyming poetry, and that's not particularly fashionable right now. Most of the poetry that you will hear out there is more free form, and that seems to be the general take. But as a lawyer, I think there's something that draws you to structure, and you like to have things neat as far as conceptually, I'm not a particularly neat person in reality, but I like to have some kind of structure that leads my thought. And and poems that are rhyming give you a lot of scaffolding to put your thoughts upon. So that's the
Absolutely.
reason that I went toward rhyming. But the whole book is not rhyme. Some of the poems are not rhymed, and there are many essays. Um, I've got several that have to do with my position on gun control. There are several that have to do with our country and how do we feel about our country, things like that. And that addresses the patriotism issue, which I feel is kind of lacking, especially among young people in this country. I think people are getting very ambivalent about how attached they feel to the country, because they feel like the government isn't necessarily serving them.
Absolutely. So is it wrong on their part to understand it? It may not be that they are not patriotic. It is just that they are not too much aligned with the way different governments think, and that they think to more on politics only in staying in power, whichever party it is, and they are not necessarily thinking about the people, and the young do not want to take on any of this BS anymore in any part of the life, even against corporate culture of the present times. You see the great resignation happen even in the industry, when people are trying to sell products in the name of greenwashing, whatever washing, and the young generation doesn't want that. They want it to be a better world. What's wrong with that, Andrea?
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. This is my children's generation for the most part. And I have been a party to that for a long time, since I stay at home with my kids. I have a fairly close relationship with them, and I have heard a lot of the arguments. I mean, I agree that there's a lot of reason to feel abandoned by the government. Um, However, it's very dangerous to abandon your own government. It's very dangerous to just check out. And that's what I want to oppose. That's the opposite of what I want. I want people to be aware of the underlying structure of our government, the things that are very strong bones. I mean, it's like an old house that somebody has been neglecting. And I think we all need to do our best to feed it, to resurrect it, to make it healthy. Regardless of the government, we have to endure who we have elected. I'm obviously not a fan, but there are many out there who are, and their opinion has been represented. And I think that when someone takes power, generally in this country, they abide by the limits on that power that have been exercised in the past. And I think most of the past presidents have done that. I think that, maybe under the second George W. Bush years, when we had 9/11 and there was the war on terror, and, that was kind of an expansion of the executive power. But what is happening right now is, according to reports in the news, which is what I have to rely on as well as everybody else, it seems that not all of the branches of government are working to the same energy level, let's say. Some of them are kind of sleeping on the job, and others are just not doing what in the past we can rely on them to do, or we could, to for instance, you look at the Supreme Court and you expect them to abide by the concept that I'm sure is also common in India, stare decisis, do something consistent with what has gone before. But there have been a lot of landmark decisions in this court that just, I can't say that I read every single decision through. I don't have time for that. But the results are surprising, given what you know from before. So I think that people would like everything to calm down a bit, and I think the young people are, some of them are very active in the protests and things like that. I'm sure you've heard about the No Kings rallies, um, and that's happened 3 or 4 times this year. And they all, either appear or another segment of them are kind of like, is this even the right kind of government? Are we even structured properly? Should we be more, obviously, Mamdani was elected in New York City, which is a very amazing feat. He seems like a great candidate. But since the word socialism is attached to his name, that kind of has uh, yeah, almost a pariah quality. It's like you don't usually use that in a political context. Bernie gets away with it, but not a whole lot of people other than him do. So maybe this is the way America is going to eventually go, toward a more socialist country. Obviously Germany was more socialist than the United States is. The United States does not have much of a welfare state at all. Since I have a child with disabilities, I have some familiarity with what's available, and there's not a whole lot, you know. And for older people, I'm approaching my retirement, and that is also a fearful thing when you are in the United States. Obviously you save as much as you can, but there isn't a blanket coverage, and now they're toying with Medicare, and they're toying with Medicaid, and these are programs that people rely upon. And I'm sure you may have heard that the SNAP benefits were briefly discontinued because of the lovely government shutdown we just went through. And SNAP benefits are for the poorest of the poor, and that is so that they eat. And to me, that's just like, have they not read, about Versailles? Haven't they read about, the French Revolution? This is not a good thing for people to be discontented because they can't eat. And, obviously they stopped it before it got too far, but I think they're playing with fire.
Absolutely, and yeah, but isn't these things are part of the political democratic process in a nation's history? This president is a bit more clued into everything. The earlier president was clueless about so many things, and so we all have to see it from that angle. Maybe the next 2 3 years will pass, and maybe America, the great United States of America and the great people will elect a president which will look at it much more holistically from everyone's point of view. What is your understanding of this as a poet, as a lawyer, as a mother of a child, and even as a citizen?
My understanding of exactly what? Of
Of
the
the political process, and that it will lead to some better outcome in the future, and that it is not going to be this way for some people who do not like it. Some people who like it, for them also it will not be that way. Everything will pass, and a new process of a political process will begin in the future.
Oh yes, that's it. That's exactly what I expect will happen. That's what I hope will happen. I think there's a lot of hand wringing and Chicken Little, the sky is falling going on in the press, and certainly in the most liberal of the presses. But I I guess the purpose of my book is to talk to those people who really feel um, that everything is coming to an end, that it's not salvageable. It's we're tipping over the edge, and I don't believe that. I don't want to believe that. I feel that the structure that we have and the processes that we have are strong enough to hold if people don't abandon them. So I guess my concern is that everyone stays engaged, that everyone um, is a citizen for the next 3 years and doesn't check out.
Right.
And
Right. Carry on. Carry on.
oh, I'm thinking in my book, I have several poems that deal with how this it feels like chaos in our country to me, how it affects how other people look at our country. And perhaps you would know better than I do the answer to that question. But as you know, Trump has kind of distanced himself from the UN, distanced himself from the WHO, said, "Oh no, we don't have to worry so much about vaccines." Obviously the COVID scare has kind of dissipated, but there's no telling if something else will come sometime in the future. That was a very scary time to be in Florida in the US. Florida is an extremely red state, which, of course, red and blue are the the parties, Republican and Democrat, respectively. And Florida has been mostly represented by Republicans in every branch of government for quite a long time. So during COVID, it was, you know, there was no umbrella of the state protecting us until there was a vaccine. And once there was a vaccine, there was a huge uproar about, are vaccines good? Are vaccines bad? Should we take them? And that perhaps the same thing happened in India. I don't know. But it was a very frightening time. And for me, one of the best things that happened when Biden entered office was that he just calmed all that down. It was no longer, he just decided, okay, well, this is what we are going to do about it. And although Trump is actually the one who came up with the vaccine, so he should get credit for that, but implementing it, getting people getting people some help when everyone, a lot of people lost their jobs, when there were problems with the imports, things like that. I think Biden did a fairly good job. And he also funded infrastructure in the United States, which, had been neglected somewhat and needed help, needed some extra funding. So, but as soon as Trump came in, anything that was a grant was going to be revoked. I mean, there's just a lot of things that I feel like the government does something when the American government does something, you should be able to rely on the word of the American government. I mean, we have had a very privileged position of prestige in the world, and people depend on us in our country and out of our country. And I don't feel like that's really something we can say anymore. It reminds me of when I was in Germany, because I was in Germany during the Reagan years, and Reagan was also a very pivotal president. I think that Trump has had at least an equivalent impact on the United States as Reagan did. And but Reagan was not a popular president throughout the world because he was very interested in home, I think. And he had some interesting financial or fiscal positions that were unusual for the United States. And he also seemed a little, bellicose, a little fighting, like he wanted to pick a fight. So so it was kind of a little bit embarrassing to be in Europe during a period of time when Reagan was reviled, and there were protests, Amis raus, Americans get out, and you just wanted to hide, you just wanted to blend in because um, it was just embarrassing, it was kind of painful.
Right, right. And which is the biggest issue that concerns you? Is it about immigration? Is it about gun control? Is it about anything else? Or is it that you belong to another party or you support another party?
Well, of course I do. I'm a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. Um, the Republican Party has changed over time. The Republican Party was more middle of the road. There wasn't a whole lot of daylight between Democrats and Republicans, until Trump came along. But I think that my greatest fear is the erosion of these institutions I'm talking about. So, you don't want Congress to be a laptop dog. You want Congress to act independently and represent the people that they, are tasked to represent. And you don't want the, I don't want to accuse the Supreme Court of anything. I'm sure there are very, very intelligent jurists on the court. It's just, it it feels like Trump wins too often. So I don't know what the mechanics behind that is, but it feels very it's not the balance that we're used to, and I'm sure the three branches of government, we want them all to be equal. We want them all to be fighting with each other. We don't want them to be buddies, because that becomes a single entity governing everyone, and then they can do whatever they want.
Absolutely. So you feel that the checks and balances, which are the hallmark of a democratic system, that is a bit lopsided at this point in time.
Yeah, that's the way it seems to me. Of course, I watch liberal news. I don't watch Fox News. I have tried to watch Fox News, and I have not enjoyed it. But I I think you have to you have to support the things in the United States that are fundamental. So we have a representative government. People elect presidents. People elect their representatives, and they deserve to have their points of view spoken about and defended. And that doesn't feel like it's happening right now. I don't know if you heard, maybe 6 months ago, they had issues with the was it the Republican representatives were coming home to their districts, and huge crowds of people were getting upset and shouting at them and telling them, you need to represent us. And then sometimes they didn't even come to those gatherings where they were supposed to be, and that's not good. So I'm in a red state. I obviously have more blue views, and do I feel represented right now? I don't particularly know.
Absolutely. Politics is like that, and I'm sure a lot of people view politics in their own way. Even in India, if we look at it from the present administration, we are also bearing the impact of the Trump tariffs and much more. So but when we look at the political discourse in the US, everyone has to look at it from their point of view, including yours. As outsiders will look at it purely from understanding things from how it is all happening and have our own views, most of them private. But yes, the whole world is watching the United States of America and the politics that's happening at the moment. There's so much to learn about all this from you, Andrea, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn more from you from your book. What's the best way for them to do so?
The direct link to the book is books2read.com/polemics, and here's the book. It looks like that. It's also on. The books2read.com will take you to all the different links. Amazon, Barnes Noble, all the online places. You can always order it at your local bookstore. They do have catalogs, and I am in them. And I look forward to having a lot of people read it. It has lots of insight, especially if you're coming from a place where you don't really understand what's been happening in the US outside of the headlines. It kind of gives you an American's perspective on what it feels like to be in it.
Absolutely. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much.